"Get on the ground, old man," I said. "On the ground." The young officer's voice, sharp as shattered glass, ripped through the evening quiet of Green Lawn Cemetery. Arthur Jenkins, 78 years old, his back already aching from kneeling beside his wife's grave, felt a jolt, not of fear but of profound weariness. He just wanted a few more minutes with Sarah. Before he could fully comply, before his old knees could even protest the sudden demand, a searing pain shot through him. 1,000 volts of manufactured lightning. He crumpled, the scent of freshly cut grass and damp earth filling his nostrils as his cheek hit the cool ground. The last thing he saw was the officer's polished black boot, inches from his face. Comment, respect. Arthur Jenkins was a creature of habit, a man whose life had been pared down to its essentials. A small, meticulously kept apartment, his thrice-weekly volunteer shift at the Veterans Outreach Center, and the sacred twilight visits to Sarah. 49 years they'd had. A lifetime etched in shared laughter and quiet sorrows. A bond severed only by the cruel thief of cancer 2 years prior. He'd been a Marine. A lifetime ago, it seemed. Vietnam, the jungle, the fear, the camaraderie. A Purple Heart tucked away in a cedar box alongside Sarah's favorite locket. Now his uniform was a faded windbreaker. His gait slowed by age and old wounds. His voice soft, almost hesitant. To the casual observer, he looked like any other elderly man, perhaps a little lost, a little lonely. He wasn't lost. He was exactly where he needed to be, tending the small rose bush he'd planted by Sarah's headstone, whispering updates about their grandchildren, his hand resting on the cool granite as if he could still feel her warmth. The cemetery officially closed at dusk, but the groundskeeper, old Mr. Henderson, always turned a blind eye to Arthur's lingering presence. He understood. Tonight, however, the familiar peace was shattered. A patrol car, lights off, had glided silently along the perimeter road. 2 young officers, Miller and Davis, barely out of their 20s, emerged. Miller, the taller of the two, with a jutting chin and an air of impatient authority, strode toward Arthur. Davis, younger, quieter, hung back slightly. "Sir, cemeteries." "Closed," Miller announced, his tone clipped, devoid of courtesy. Arthur, startled, slowly rose, wincing as his joints protested. "Oh, I'm sorry, officer. Just saying good night to my wife. I'll be leaving." He offered a small, apologetic smile. Miller's eyes, cold and dismissive, swept over Arthur's worn clothes, lingering for a moment on the dirt stains on his knees from tending the roses. "Yeah, well, good night was an hour ago. You're trespassing." Arthur's smile faded. "I understand, officer. Mr. Henderson usually doesn't mind if I stay a bit late." "I'm very quiet." "We're not Mr. Henderson," Miller snapped, "and we do mind. Now, are you going to move along, or do we have a problem?" Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Miller, maybe we just give him a warning?" Miller shot Davis a glare that silenced him. "This isn't a discussion. ID, now." Arthur fumbled in his windbreaker. His wallet was in his back pocket, awkward to reach. It's just here, officer." He was old, tired, and the sudden aggression was disorienting. He felt a familiar tremor in his hands, a relic of the jungle, usually manageable, but now amplified by the stress. The demand hung in the air, heavy and laced with an unspoken threat. Arthur, wanting only to comply to diffuse the unwarranted hostility, reached slowly toward his inner jacket pocket. He kept his military ID there alongside a small, laminated photograph of Sarah in her youth, her smile radiant. It was a habit, a comfort, he thought. Perhaps showing his veteran status might temper their approach. "My identification, it's right here," he murmured, his fingers brushing against the worn leather of the ID holder. Officer Miller, however, saw only a furtive movement, an old man reaching inside his jacket in the dimming light, his training, or perhaps his inherent suspicion kicked into overdrive. "He's reaching!" Miller yelled, his voice cracking with adrenaline. Before Arthur could utter another word, before he could even comprehend the sudden escalation, Miller lunged, shoving him hard in the chest. The unexpected force sent Arthur stumbling backward. His foot caught on an uneven patch of grass, and he felt himself falling. Instinctively, his hand, the one that had been moving toward his pocket, flew out to break his fall, the other flailing for balance. But Miller was already moving, his taser drawn. "Don't move! Get down!" There was no time to react, no time to explain. The electric crackle echoed through the silent gravestones, followed by Arthur's choked cry as the barbs hit and the incapacitating current seized his body. He fell, not like a tree, but like a puppet whose strings had been violently cut, hitting the soft earth with a sickening thud. The world went white, then black. Officer Davis gasped, his face paling. "Miller, what did you do?" Miller, breathing heavily, his taser still pointed at Arthur's twitching form, retorted, "He was reaching." He didn't comply? Protocol. But his voice lacked conviction. Arthur lay still, a faint moan escaping his lips. The scent of ozone mingled with the earthy fragrance of the cemetery. Hidden by a large oak tree near the cemetery office, Mr. Henderson, the elderly groundskeeper, had witnessed the entire exchange. He'd seen Arthur arrive, as he always did. He'd seen the police car. He'd felt a prickle of unease when the officers approached Arthur so aggressively. Now, watching Arthur collapse, his heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't right. Arthur was a good man, a gentle soul. Henderson knew Arthur had served. They'd spoken of it briefly once. Without a second thought, Henderson pulled out his old flip phone. His fingers, gnarled from years of tending graves and gardens, fumbled for a number he hadn't dialed in years, but knew by heart, a direct line. He had been given it by a certain Marine colonel who had buried his own father here, a colonel who had made it clear that men like Arthur Jenkins were to be looked after. The call was brief. Henderson's voice low and urgent. "It's Henderson from Green Lawn. It's Sergeant Major Jenkins. A problem. Police." They tased him. He gave the location within the cemetery. A clipped, authoritative voice on the other end acknowledged the information, promising immediate action. 6 minutes, that's all it took. The first indication was a distant, rising chorus of sirens. But these weren't the familiar yelp of local police or ambulance. These had a deeper, more resonant thrum, a sense of purpose that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Then headlights. Not one or two, but a procession, slicing through the twilight, turning into the main gates of Green Lawn. 3 black SUVs, government plates gleaming, and behind them, a dark green staff car, its flags furled, but its aura unmistakable. They moved with a quiet, disciplined speed, pulling up near the scene with an unnerving precision. Doors opened in unison. From the staff car emerged a figure who radiated authority as naturally as the sun radiated heat. General Marcus Davies, United States Marine Corps, commander of the nearby Expeditionary Force, stepped out. He was a man in his late 50s. Lean, his dress blues, immaculate, even after what was likely a hastily interrupted evening. His face, etched with the lines of command and hard decisions, was grim. Flanking him were several other uniformed Marines, their expressions mirroring his own, a mixture of concern and barely suppressed anger, as more Marines disembarked from the SUVs forming a silent, watchful perimeter. The atmosphere in the cemetery shifted palpably. The 2 young officers, Miller and Davis, suddenly looked very small, very out of their depth. General Davies' eyes, sharp and accustomed to assessing battlefields in seconds, took in the scene Arthur Jenkins, his former platoon sergeant, a man he revered, lying on the ground by his wife's grave. A taser, wire still connecting him to the officer standing defensively nearby. A muscle twitched in Davies' jaw. He strode forward, his boots crunching on the gravel path. Each step a hammer blow against the previous disrespect. What in God's name is going on here? His voice was low, but it cut through the air like a razor, commanding instant attention. Officer Miller, visibly rattled by the sudden appearance. of high-ranking military personnel puffed out his chest. "Sir, this man was trespassing after hours, became non-compliant, and I perceived a threat when he reached—" General Davies didn't let him finish. He knelt beside Arthur, his expression softening with concern as he checked his pulse. "Arthur, Sergeant Major, can you hear me?" Arthur's eyelids fluttered, a flicker of recognition. "General Marcus." His voice was a hoarse whisper. Davies looked up, his gaze locking onto Miller, cold and piercing. "Officer, do you have any idea who this man is?" Miller stammered. "No, sir, just an old man causing a disturbance." Davies rose slowly, his full height seeming to diminish the officer. "This old man," he began, his voice tight with fury, "is Sergeant Major Arthur Jenkins. He served 30 years in the United States Marine Corps. He fought in Chazon. He dragged 3 wounded men, myself included, when I was a raw second lieutenant, out of a kill zone under heavy fire. He wears the Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars, for valor, and 2 Purple Hearts." Davies' hand went to his own chest, as if feeling the weight of those commendations. "This old man taught me what it means to be a Marine, what it means to lead, what it means to sacrifice. He's a living legend in my corps, and you tased him while he was visiting his wife's grave." He gestured to the headstone. "Sarah. Jenkins. A finer woman never drew breath. He comes here every evening." The Marines surrounding them stood straighter, their eyes fixed on the 2 officers with an unblinking intensity that was far more unnerving than any shouted threat. Officer Davis looked like he was about to be sick. Miller's bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by a dawning horror. The silence that followed General Davies' revelation was thick, suffocating. Officer Miller's face, previously flushed with aggression, was now ashen. His eyes darted from the stern, accusing face of the general to the ring of stoic Marines, then to the figure of Arthur Jenkins, now being gently helped to a sitting position by 2 of the younger Marines. The discarded taser on the grass seemed to mock him. Officer Davis visibly trembled, his gaze fixed on the ground. The police chief, Captain Howard Sterling, arrived then, red-faced and out of breath, his unmarked car skidding to a halt, a respectful distance away. He'd received a call that had made his blood run cold. A general, USMC, on the line, his voice like ice, demanding his immediate presence at Green Lawn regarding an incident involving one of his officers and a decorated veteran. Seeing the assembled Marines and General Davies' thunderous expression, Sterling knew this was bad, very bad. "General Davies," Sterling began, his voice strained, "I just heard. What happened here?" Davies turned, his eyes like chips of flint. "What happened, Chief Sterling, is that 2 of your officers assaulted a highly decorated war hero, a man who has given more to this country than they can possibly comprehend, while he was peacefully mourning his wife." He recounted the events, his voice never rising, but each word delivered with scathing precision. Miller tried to interject. "But, sir, I followed procedure. I felt threatened." General Davies cut him off with a look that could freeze fire. "Threatened? By a man nearly 80 years old, carrying flowers and heartache? You felt threatened by Sergeant Major Arthur Jenkins?" He practically spat the name, as if the very idea was an obscenity. Chief Sterling's face grew darker with each word. He looked at Miller and Davis with undisguised fury and shame. "Officers Miller and Davis," Sterling's voice was dangerously quiet, "you are both suspended, effective immediately. Pending a full internal investigation, hand over your badges and service weapons now." The 2 officers, their arrogance utterly shattered, fumbled to comply, their movements clumsy under the collective condemning gaze of the Marines and their own chief. The metallic click of their equipment being placed on the hood of their patrol car was the only sound for a long moment. Vindication, stark and absolute, hung in the air as heavy as the scent of impending rain. Paramedics, summoned by one of General Davis' aides, arrived quickly and attended to Arthur. The barbs were removed, his vitals checked. He was shaken, bruised, but thankfully his heart had withstood the shock. General Davies never left his side, his hand resting reassuringly on Arthur's shoulder as Arthur slowly recovered, sitting. On a portable chair a Marine had produced, the atmosphere around Sarah's grave transformed. The remaining Marines, some older veterans themselves, others young and in their prime, formed a loose, respectful cordon. They didn't speak, but their presence was a profound statement of solidarity, of honor. Once Arthur felt steady enough, General Davies helped him to his feet. Together, the old sergeant major and the general, who had once been his boot lieutenant, stood before Sarah's headstone. The other Marines kept a respectful distance, silent honor guard. Arthur reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and touched the cool granite. "She wouldn't have liked all this fuss, Marcus," he said softly, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "No, Art," Davies replied, his own voice thick with emotion, "but she would have been proud of the men who came for you. Efficerasters. The internal investigation into officers Miller and Davis was swift and damning. Both were found to have violated multiple departmental policies, including excessive use of force and conduct unbecoming. They faced severe disciplinary action, their careers in law enforcement irrevocably tarnished. More importantly, Chief Sterling, deeply affected by the incident, mandated comprehensive new training for his entire department, focusing on de-escalation, techniques, community policing, and specific protocols for interacting with elderly citizens and veterans. Arthur's ordeal, painful as it was, had inadvertently become a catalyst for positive change. The dignity of Sergeant Major Arthur Jenkins, so cruelly violated, was restored not by an apology, though that came too, profusely from a humbled Chief Sterling, but by the unwavering respect of his brothers in arms. The sight of those Marines standing steadfast in the twilight was a testament to a bond forged in hardship and loyalty, a bond that time and distance could not erode. The moral, the primary lesson etched into the memory of all who witnessed or heard of that night, was a stark reminder: never judge a soul by its frail vessel. Behind a gentle demeanor and worn clothing can reside the heart of a lion, a hero whose sacrifices paved the way for the very freedoms others take for granted, or worse, abuse. True worth is not always visible to the careless eye. A few weeks later, Arthur returned to Sarah's grave at his usual time. As he knelt to tend the roses, he noticed a small, discreet bronze plaque newly installed near the base of her headstone. It read, "In enduring honor of Sergeant Major Arthur Jenkins, USMC, a grateful corps remembers." He looked up, and in the distance, near the cemetery gates, he saw a patrol car. A young officer, one he didn't recognize, stepped out, saw him, and offered a slow, deliberate nod of respect before getting back into his vehicle and driving. On the world Arthur knew was still imperfect, but sometimes, just sometimes, respect found its way home. Subscribe to Hidden Sparks, type honor.